Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another Supatease video. And in this one, you will know the answer to a very important question on the Restoration Druid when it comes to PvP. And that is, when is it time to cast Cyclone? When is it absolutely necessary? Well, in today's video, you will know the answer to that. In this lobby specifically, I had lost 4 rounds in a row. I had been playing very passively, staying in the back, using my defensive cooldowns, anticipating damage, and this was not enough. And this is because when facing other healers that have better mana regeneration than you, like a Mistweaver Monk, in a lobby with multiple casters, you are not going to be able to outpace a Mistweaver Monk. You need to be very aggressive in these types of caster lobbies, pushing towards them, bashing them, cycloning them, and playing very aggressive for your team if you're going to be able to overcome the amount of throughput that they currently have. So in this position, I've started the fight in tree form. Really good way to start every single lobby. I'm sprinting my team in, and I'm pushing in headlong, aggressive, rooting the monk, bashing the monk, and trying to get the monk under crowd control. If we get targeted here, we can use Bark Skin to bolster our own defensives, overgrowth ourselves, and keep pushing and go for Cyclones. And now with these Cyclones, we want to dump Moonfires and Star Surges onto the lowest health target of the enemy that is currently at that time, which happens to be the Balance Druid. We're going to Iron Bark the Shaman so that we can continue to stay aggressive, so that we can continue pushing towards the Mistweaver. If you are not pushing on top of the Mistweaver Monk in these types of situations, or in some cases Restoration Shamans, they are going to just out-mana you in these lobbies. I'm cycloning targets low health here, so this is another good time to use Cyclone. Denies recovery, gives me time to push towards the enemy healer. I can then root them behind the pillar and try and go for more Cyclones. We then get a Cyclone onto the healer, switching that so the Boomkin still hasn't fully recovered. Then we dump our damage spells, Moonfire and Star Surge, into the Boomkin, who is the lowest target. We try to go for another Cyclone. We get spell locked. We can just go into bear form and frenzied regen if we get spell locked. And the main advantage in these spellcaster lobbies, if you do get spell locked and you play aggressive like this, is you're soaking the interrupt for your teammates, and you can just recover yourself with frenzied regen. So I'd wish that I'd been playing like this at the start of the lobby, because maybe I wouldn't have been 0-4 by the time I got to round 5 and 6 here. And this is why I'm kind of sharing this knowledge with you. We're pushing forward, bashing the Boomkin. We're trying to go for a Cyclone. We get spell locked. We can just pull away, go into bear form, keep ourselves hotted, avoid some damage, and ultimately we're able to swarm and overwhelm the Warlock. Now I can show you why it looks so horrible on the other side of this trade. So let's take a game where I played incredibly passively with no casted Cyclones whatsoever, just to show you what's going to happen in these lobbies. So Mistweaver Monk is going to outmana you in these caster wizard lobbies. Resto Shaman is going to outmana you in these caster wizard lobbies. I would say that the only time you don't need to do this cycloning strategy is against healers that will run out of mana faster than you, which usually is priests, paladins, and those two. So you can play a little more passively. But this is what a passive play style will look like and what it will net you, which is going to be inevitably defeat. We're staying in the back. We're keeping Life Bloom on both of our DPS. We're splitting Adaptive Swarm here with Cenarian Ward, so that we're getting amplified hots onto 2 targets, because 2 targets are taking damage. Mistweaver rolls up to us and goes for an Incapacitate. We're into Tree Form right away, using Innervate right away to try and maximize our mana retention. Tree of Life is going to give you Omen of Clarity procs, which means you get free regrowths. Innervate's going to give you the ability to fully hot your team for free, and you want to use it as soon as possible so they come off cooldown, so you get them twice in a game. I'm also trying my best to use roots on Demonology Warlock pets. Really important. I get feared here. My Shaman stunned, can't tremor me, and this is now Incarnation from the enemy Balance Druid, so we're going to Cenarian Ward the Shaman. This is honestly a good time to use your personal defensives also during the Incarnation of the Balance Druid, but we're playing really passively. We're just staying at the pillar. We're just keeping our hots up, right? This is usually the standard mode of play for Resto Druid, is to try and minimize as much risk as possible, sit back with your team, and keep your hots split in a lobby like this with double caster doing multiple target damage, extending our Cenarian Wards and extending our Adaptive Swarms with our Swiftmen, and then using Nature's Swiftness to recover with Soul of the Forest. The Monk occasionally pushing up to incap us is not going to be too big of a deal. We'll Iron Bark our allies when they're stunned, because usually that means they're focusing damage. We'll root up Demonology Warlock pets here when they've empowered them to prevent them from connecting as much damage as possible, and then just slowly pick ourselves back up. Now it's me and the Shaman taking damage, so I'll switch Life Bloom to myself instead of the Warlock. Try and use these Omen of Clarity procs behind the pillar. Really good way to apply regrowth to targets with Life Bloom with the talents that I run, is you cast it on the target that doesn't have a Life Bloom, and it'll apply regrowth to the ones that do, and you can do it behind the pillar. And that's going to really help out your mastery healing. But you can see the mana already. I'm basically 10% mana. Mistweaver is still 50% mana. We're not very close to really getting a kill on any target. We're down Ironbark. We're down Shield Wall. Thankfully, due to like using Tree Form really early, we're going to get Tree Form here. So maybe we can make some moves here and try and push in and get a kill. But you can see how passive I'm playing. I'm basically not even going for Bash. I'm just trying to heal. I'm just trying to do as much healing output as possible. But inevitably, you're going to run out of mana. And the monk gets easier to land crowd control than you do. So they roll up the end cap. They can leg sweep. And then they can just run your shaman down. And this is pretty much how every lobby will go if you play too passively into a Mistweaver monk, where they'll just occasionally end cap you and someone might die in that, or they're going to out mana you. And then as soon as you're out of mana, you're kind of just like, well, what am I going to do? Pray that I live to the next innervate and hope that my DPS can kill something? It's really easy for Mistweaver monks to heal through this type of dot damage and caster damage. So if they're not getting crowd control, they're not getting interrupted, and you're not getting on top of them, you're going to lose. And here I'm desperate. I'm jumping on the monk, but it's already too late. My shaman is basically dead. And that's when I realized, you know, you got to play aggressive. That's when I moved into that next round here. And then when we move into the final lobby, where we're going to have to do the same, we're going to have to be really aggressive. And again, in these lobbies, it's not, you're not as scared of dying. It's not as punishing as I've found to cast Cyclone to get kicked. As long as you have hots on your teammates before you're going for it, or you pre-Ironbark a target, you can do it. So we go for Bash on Monk, we go behind the pillar, we cast Cyclone, we get the Cyclone behind the pillar out of line of sight of interrupts. We're going to innervate Overgrowth, get our hots back up on our team, and we're already immediately into Tree of Life, knowing we're going to take a bunch of damage here. But we just want to be making sure that we're using Bash and Cyclone as much as possible on the Mistweaver to give our teammates time to disrupt them. We want to be pushing on top of the Mistweaver, really important, getting interrupts. Now we got a counter spell onto the Mistweaver. Triple Shadow Fury, really good, well execution of crowd control and aggressive plays. And you can see how much better that went. The game just immediately ended and we were able to win, unlike some of the earlier rounds, like even the first round, which I think was the most horrifying one for me, to be able to try and recover. No, it was the Destro Ellie this round particularly. Like if you're playing too passively, where it's Warlocks, Ellies, and Boomkins and Shadow Priests, you're not gonna be able to win these lobbies into other healers like Mistweaver monk. Now if it's enemy druid, you can maybe play a little bit more passive. I do think it's good to find moments where you can get a bash. You can see in this situation, I've bashed a DPS. I'm just trying to slow damage. This is when I'm still playing 100% with passivity in mind and minimizing risk. Life Bloom on 2 DPS targets, sitting behind the pillar, just spamming out Omen of Clarity regrowth during this time to min-max my mana as much as possible. And this one, I stagger my innervate a little bit until I'm going to use Overgrowth after my tree form. But honestly, you do want to use it pretty much as soon as possible, because these rounds are going to end really fast, and the chance that you can get 2 innervates is going to get slimmer and slimmer the longer you take to use it. But now we're out of tree farm, so we're going to push forward. We're going to Ironbark Snaring Ward. Unfortunately, overlapped with Barkskin. I think I realized that it was better to just let the Boomkin use Barkskin and save my Ironbark, because now look, the Warlock's taking damage. I could have Ironbarked him. I end up getting Counterspell. The risk of casting when you're in the middle of the map. This forces on any resolve. This forces Hellstone from my Warlock, basically every cooldown. We do want to be using Tranquility to reset our Tree of Life. We want to get all of our cooldowns on cooldown. So Doubt Storm, Ironbark, Snaring Ward, NS. We want Tree of Life. We want everything on cooldown before we use Tranquility, but it doesn't even matter. We're just going to die to damage. And this is what I mean. Resto Druid is not going to keep up with the amount of healing output that Mistweaver can do in these kind of caster lobbies where you're just trading damage back and forth. You need to just be pushing the pace, getting cyclones, and having your team end the game before either 1, you're out of mana, 2, you get overwhelmed, or 3, you get CC'd by incap or a random fear or something, and you're going to end up dying. So it is in these situations that you do want to be looking for cyclones. Another situation where you want to be aware of and looking for cyclones is when you're playing with a mage. I got a lobby with Venruki earlier on, I think. I'm trying to find exactly what that lobby was, or how far ago that lobby was. But what can be really important is when playing with a mage is if they're getting tunneled, you've got to help them out with the melee that are on them and attacking them. Otherwise, they just kind of can't do anything and they're going to die. So this is the other situation. This team has a priest, so I could play passive, run them out of mana, and win the game. But sometimes you're going to have to cyclone in these games because Rogue Demon Hunter is going to make your mage do nothing. And if they're doing nothing, you're not going to run the priest out of mana. So I go in stealth. I'm in a position. I'm getting ready to bash the Rogue from stealth, getting ready to peel as soon as possible. This is my main goal whenever I'm fighting a Rogue. So I see the Rogue. I'm just immediately casting Cyclone. I end up cycloning the Rogue in their kidney shot. And they get Mass Dispelled on it. We go for Overgrowth, cut Touch of Karma. We're going to go for a big heal here with Overgrowth and Karma and lob in as much damage as possible. We end up killing him. Honestly, this round was a little bit too fast to really describe what I was talking about. But you do want to be trying your best to cyclone in these lobbies with a mage. when you know they're going to get trained. So you get like Druid Mage, and it's into double melee DPS that don't have ranged kicks. That's like a big deal. If there's like an Enhancement Shaman or a Resto Shaman, and there's ways that they might be able to get a lot of interrupts on you, and you could end up dying while you're fishing for Cyclone, super high risk. This doesn't really have any risk. If I cast Cyclone here, like he's going to have to step kick me, and then he can't step back to the mage. The mage will blink, or the monk has to roll over to me. So it's not a super big risk to be casting Cyclones against these classes. So Cyclone the Windwalker, low HP, no trinket, massive spell, try and Cyclone again. He rolls and kicks me. Not super end of the world again, because if the monk uses mobility to get to me, then the monk won't have mobility to switch then to my mage later on. So soaking up mobility for that your mage is just as good as getting the clone in a lot of these instances. So these are the two scenarios you want to be using Cyclone. Is you're paired up with a mage, you're fighting double melee DPS that have limited ranged interrupts, or you're in a caster lobby with a Mistweaver monk or a Resto Shaman where they're going to out mana you, they're going to out heal you, and the only way is to kind of play aggressive in their face, getting crowd control and trying to win the game before those scenarios occur. So I know this is like a commonly or frequently asked question in my stream, which you can check out in the description down below, and I wanted to make a video to cover these main circumstances where it's going to be the best use of the ability, where you're not just going to be playing passive in all situations, in all lobbies, because otherwise you're going to have a tough time in these given situations winning consistently. So I hope that this was a good lesson for you. I hope that this has answered your question on when you need to be using Cyclone and helped you identify when you need to use it. I know a lot of players have been watching my videos here on the channel. It's helped them gain a lot of rating. So definitely make sure you're subscribed if you want to be gaining rating and staying up to date with any changes related to World of Warcraft, so you're always ahead of the competition. Thank you very, very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.